This testimony raises serious questions about how and when the decision to seek the death penalty was made, and what factors may have influenced that decision. So, you talked with your prosecution team about whether the state would seek the death penalty, correct?
Yes.
This discussion wasn't before the arrest happened. The arrest came about 2 days later. But between the time the case was filed and the arrest, there were discussions about seeking the death penalty.
Okay, so what you're saying, if I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but just so the record is clear, is that after Mr. Robinson was arrested, your team had a conversation about whether or not it would file a notice of intent to seek the death penalty.
It was rather informal. I don't know that we all got together and said, what are we going to do? I would talk to different members of my team. Okay. But I had pretty much made up my decision. And so they knew where I was going.
Did you make up your decision before there was an arrest?
I thought that based on if we had the evidence that, yeah, we would be seeking the death penalty.
And you were already aware at that time that the child of one of your team members was present at that event, right?
Sure.
All right. Now, what you're saying is that and that you discussed that with all of the team members, even if informally?
As far as the death penalty?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't exclude from that conversation the prosecutor whose child we're talking about? That prosecutor was included in the conversation about whether to seek the death penalty?
Yes.
All right. And you're aware, because I think you were present, that there were a number of press conferences held by elected state officials both before and after Mr. Robinson's arrest, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The governor, who's a former licensed attorney in Utah, held a press conference on September 10th. Were you present there?
Probably. I was present at two different press conferences.
So there was one on the 10th and one on the 11th?
I know he made other statements as well, so I'm not quite certain. I know that I was at two different press conferences.
So when Governor Cox announced at a press conference that the state was going to seek the death penalty, had you already told Governor Cox that that was your decision?
I believe his statements, the only thing that I can remember of his statements is he said, by the way, or something to that effect, Utah has the death penalty. And so that's the one statement that I'm aware of.
It wasn't exactly a demand for the death penalty at first. But by the time charges were officially filed, I had made my final decision to seek the death penalty. At some point, I informed the governor that I intended to pursue the death penalty. I don't clearly remember whether that conversation happened before or after Mr. Robinson was arrested.
The governor said at that second press conference, we are working with our attorneys, getting affidavits so we can pursue the death penalty in this case, and that will happen. And you were standing next to him when he said that, right?
I probably was.
Okay. Had you already told him that you've discussed this with your team and this is our decision?
I may have. I remember telling him that I would be seeking the death penalty.
Did you tell the governor that the child of one of the members of your office was present at the shooting?
No.
Did you tell anybody else in state government that the child of one of the members of your team was at the rally?
Not that I can recall. It just wasn't part of my thinking.
Okay. Are you aware whether the member of your team told the governor or anybody in state government about that?
I don't know. Certainly not when I was in the room with them that I can recall.
Right, now I'm going to ask you the same questions about federal officials. Did you inform any federal officials that one of your prosecution team members, a senior member of your office, had a child who was there at the time of the shooting?
No.
did you tell anybody in federal government or federal law enforcement that you were going to be seeking the death penalty before Mr. Robinson was elected? I'm sorry, before Mr. Robinson was arrested?
I mean, other than, I mean, when I talked to the governor, Kash Patel and Dan Bongino were there as well, so they heard my statement that that's what I intended to do.
Before the death penalty notice was filed, the President of the United States went on national television and said, "I hope he gets the death penalty." You were aware of that statement? Yes. You also stated that part of your decision was based on a campaign promise you made when you ran for elected office 3 years earlier. You committed to seeking the death penalty, and you followed through on that commitment.
Sometimes we call that a campaign promise. I'm not trying to make light of it, but that is what we frequently call commitments that we make to the voters, right?
It was a commitment that I would seek the death penalty in all appropriate cases.
And you knew before you filed the notice that the governor thought it was an appropriate case,
Yeah,
and the president thought it was an appropriate case.
yeah.
Did Mr. Patel express his views?
Not that I recall. I mean, he was doing the bidding of the president, so, but I did find it a little interesting, Governor Cox, because he plays no part in the decision. So,
Did you tell Governor Cox after he made those public statements, this is not your decision, this is my decision?
no.
Was it important to you that the people you selected to be on the team for this prosecution remain on the team? I mean, you handpicked this team, right?
I did handpick this team.
Right. And the person whose child we're talking about is a long-standing, experienced senior member of your office,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
It was important for you that they be part of this case.
I want the best people on my team, and I believe I chose the best people.
May I have a moment?
Of course.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have no further questions for Mr. Gray. And if I may, what he told me is that he, after the examination, I assume that there's some cross-examination, he'll be available to be on call, so we don't need the court to address that with him, but he's going to leave the building,
Okay.
which is fine with us.
Yeah, but I'll be available to come back if needed.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. Thank you, Mr. Novak.
I'd like the record to reflect that it's 5 minutes after 2 o'clock and I've concluded my direct questioning. Now turning to the state. I'm referring to a prosecutor in your office whose child was present at the shooting. Have you ever met that prosecutor's child? Not that I can remember. If I did, it was only briefly and in passing.
Did the presence of Prosecutor A's child have any effect on the decisions you've made in this case?
0.
Did that child's presence have any effect on your decision to seek the death penalty?
0.
Why did you choose to seek the death penalty in this case?
Because the evidence that had been gathered supports the aggravated murder charge, and I believe that the death penalty is entirely appropriate in this particular case.
On September 10th, you've testified that you learned that Prosecutor A's child was present at the shooting, correct?
Yes.
Did her presence affect the decisions you made on September 10th at all?
No.
Will you describe how her presence affected your decision-making on that day and in the few days following before you charged?
It had no effect whatsoever. I mean, quite frankly, as I think I testified earlier, I didn't even give it a second thought after I was told about that.
There's been some question about the reason you chose to seek the death penalty at the time you did. Now, the law in Utah allows you to wait to announce the decision to seek the death penalty until after arraignment, correct?
Yes.
Why did you give the notice of intent to seek the death penalty at the time you did rather than waiting?
I had learned from experience in a prior case in particular, the Michael Jane case, that in a highly publicized case, the longer that you delay that decision, even though, I mean, I may very well make the decision early on, and I have in certain cases, but the more delay, then it just creates all this unnecessary public speculation and everything else. And we actually, in the Michael Jane case, I went to my attorneys and they said, yeah, we usually wait. So I was waiting, but then Channel 2, I believe it was, contacted me and said that they had learned information that we were taking the death penalty off of that case. And so I had to hurry and call them before that, say that's not true. And within a month, I filed the death penalty. But it creates unnecessary angst with families of victims. I knew that this particular case was, talk about publicity, it's even more so in this case than it was in Michael Jane case. And I wanted to shut that out so that we didn't have to deal with that, and so that Erica Kirk didn't have to deal with that uncertainty.
At the end of the day, the court must determine whether justice was pursued objectively, or whether outside pressures played a role in the most serious punishment the law allows.